Moving on, we have Ross and Matthew again, and Lisa wants to speak briefly on this item.
Very briefly.
Good.
I'll move it, Mr. Chairman, anyway.
Moved by Councillor Cooper, seconded by Councillor Watson. I believe Lisa is supportive, so that'll be great.
This could be over with very quickly.
I'm prepared to answer any and all questions on this topic or any others that you might like to throw in. Councillor Darby flagged a couple of issues he had some queries about this morning, so I thought if I quickly introduced it, hopefully that would put everyone's mind at rest. This is a legacy fund. The money was collected before I was involved in local government, so it's at least 11 years old. It was collected when Albany Village was developed as a cash and lieu of parking fund, and so it can only be used for parking in the Albany Village, the historical Albany Village area. So we have, for the entire 11 years I've been in local government, been trying to find a solution for parking congestion in Albany Village. It's resulted as people have created things like a council library with a parking shortfall, a council local board office with a parking shortfall, and a number of other mixed-use sort of developments. So the opportunity has come up. There's been an amalgamation of a couple of titles with a respected developer who is developing under his own name, not as some sort of temporary development company. The developer is Nick Lowes, who developed the Massey University buildings, which are in Albany Village. He developed the building that the local board office is in. He's known to us. He's trusted by us. He's not going to develop and walk away and dissolve the company. The car parks will all be on public land. The reserve management plan allows for it. The parks policy and parks officer have worked incredibly closely. It's cost probably 9 months in the time frame for his resource consent because of the work he's been doing with council to make sure all the boxes are ticked. So from my perspective, I'm happy that it's a low risk to council. The money can only be spent here. It can only be spent on parking in Albany Village, and it's one less funny little amount on our balance sheet.
Having been up there just the last week trying to find a car park, I must admit it's pretty tight. So, Taryn, is there anything you want to
No, nothing to add.
Thank you.
Did I get everything?
Maybe just missed one.
Councillor Darby? Yep.
Thanks, Chair. And thanks, because I copied the questions, I think, to you, Chair, and to Lisa, so that everybody could see them. And thanks for the replies. So just in terms of the cost of maintenance depreciation, did you cover that one? Where does that, which budget does that come from?
It will come out of the parks ongoing renewals and maintenance, because it's actually, the car parks are going to be as part of the reserve. It's not an Auckland Transport one, it's a parks budget.
Okay, so will you be asking for additional budget for that, or will you be taking it from existing? No,
it's just, basically there's mainly a reconfiguration, and it's tidying up some old right-of-ways and easements, but the new car parks are all basically on the park edge. They're just being moved in, and with the old toilet block being removed. It's a reconfiguration, so it's the parks people were confident that the existing operations budget would cover it.
Okay, so just, Chair, 17 car parks for $354,000 is $21,000 a car park. That's not to buy the land, that's just to develop the car parks, $21,000 a car park. And in the report, it refers to Auckland Transport's sort of rate would be between 12 and 19. So we're well above the mean there, and it's just for 17 car parks. And you think that is good value. So what was your question? Was your question about car parking, or was it about access to the centre, and what was the best access to the centre?
It was a bit of both, because in a quantum we're short of car parks. The reality is the way they were configured was quite bad, and we've got people parking there all day to catch buses, and then there's a plunket room and there's a few short stay car parks in front of that. And the problem is that by moving it back, we wanted to make sure that all of the aesthetics of the way the stormwater was going to be managed, and we've actually got some trees being removed as part of that cost as well. That it's the way we're reconfiguring the entrance to the village is actually going to be opened up, and there's a few dying trees that are in the park that are going to be removed, and that's why the costs are higher than normal. And because he's paying for the new toilet block, but there are some reconfigurations of the land that comes into the contribution that we're making. It's not an economic amount to buy any land. We've looked at that before. We've looked at reconfiguring or resurfacing some parts of the reserve. We couldn't afford to do anything with that amount of money. We certainly couldn't afford to buy any land. So yes, it's expensive, but the amenity level will be high, and it is going to improve access within Albany Village and the way it flows.
Was the board ever told that the former North Shore City Council parking funds, was it told that there was a legal opinion obtained by North Shore City for a board that says that it is not a requirement for those funds to necessarily be spent on just car parking?
No, we were told it had to be spent on car parking.
So there is actually a legal opinion that was provided to the former Devonport Community Board, I think it was called, in that regard. And I guess I'll just speak to it. It is moved and seconded, and look, I'll run with it. There seems to be an appetite for it. But members, this is very, very expensive. 17 car parks, $354,000. It's huge, huge. You've got to think. I would hope the board is also thinking about the management and enforcement on that area to get the turnover. You've got to get a lot of turnover out of 17 car parks to make that remotely worth $354,000. And I'm just emphasising this because we have in Auckland a fixation with providing for the private motorist. And I know Lisa well, and I'm sure she's done the hard yards and gone, been thorough with this one. But generally, when we think about car parking and the subsidy to the motorist in Auckland, when we're talking about the subsidy or criticising the subsidy for the public transport user, here is another massive subsidy that is often just totally overlooked, and we don't want to own these costs. They are enormous, and they are costs that we are facing all over Auckland, and I want to stress that there's got to be a better way, and we've really got to knuckle down and pour and pour and pour money into public transport to make sure that in the future we're not faced with these sorts of responses.
Just through the chair, if I may, this money was collected from businesses in the area who are suffering from the lack of car parking, and we in good faith took that money to provide parking. Council is the biggest offender in terms of having facilities without sufficient parking. So we are actually the biggest traffic generator, us and Massey University. So in this instance, I would agree, if it was ratepayers being asked to fund this, it wouldn't stack up. But the fact that the businesses have already provided for this money more than 10 years ago and we haven't yet delivered on it, I think that changes the scenario slightly. And there have been at least 3 studies on traffic demand management in Albany Village since I've been involved in local government, which probably cost, I would say, about $50,000, and no solutions have been found. We have tried a number of things to get the behaviour management changed. Massey University have introduced their own parking, but students are members of the public as well. So I hear what you're saying. I don't think it's relevant in this issue because it's not coming from the general rate.
It's public money.
Good points made by both. Councillor Watson, did you bust in today?
Yeah, well, just to address some of those points that Councillor Darby brought up, in this particular instance, and I think you mentioned the requirement for a big turnover, I think you'll find you will get that turnover because you have both a library there that serves the whole Albany region, essentially, that's it. So you have a lot of people coming and going, as is the nature of libraries. There's no underground parking or anything like that. In fact, since the days of Three Guys, Goobies, and that's going back a bit, they've actually lost parking there at the back that was formerly there. There's also a reserve that's very popular with people going to play with kids and stuff, and again is kind of the focal point of Albany. That is the reserve. And while there is quite intensive housing around there where people can walk to it, because it serves such a wide catchment, people do have to come by the cars. That's just a physical reality that they can't walk there. They're so far away from the library. So, yes, it is a lot of money, but it is urgently required, and it does have a civic amenity too. That's really quite quite unique to the particular configuration of the village that Lisa talked about, that has had this problem for time and eternity.
Councillor Watson, right, last speaker is Councillor Lee.
Yes, I'm happy to support this, but I agree with Councillor Darby. However, it's not a dichotomy of pouring money into infrastructure for the private car or pouring money into public transport. We're actually doing both. It's not a question of pouring money in, but how cost effective is that investment? And that is the concern that I have as a board member of Auckland Transport. In effect, it could be argued that this is a subsidy for the private motorists. One thing that is clear and without argument, it's a subsidy, just about like everything else, to the construction sector. All of these things, in my view, are overpriced, but that's the world we live in.
Mr Chairman,
Right,
can I take my right as the mover to finish? Thank you. I agree with some of the points people have made, but we've got to remember this is actually a really good public-private venture. We've got somebody building a toilet block, and in some parts of Auckland they cost $500,000
Yes.
or $1 million for a toilet block.
Correct.
So I think that this is a win-win. And when we talk about subsidising the private car owner, that's pretty much about 90% of people in Auckland are private car owners, so they're the public. I also haven't heard factored in the community good, where mums can get their babies to the plunket nurse, to the library, their toddlers. I tell you what, no one would take their life in their hands to walk around that area because the previous councils, whatever, have actually designed that as an absolute traffic sewer coming up and down there. And the houses aren't that close. The catchment is pretty far away because it was kind of a rural area. So I think that you're not going to get mums walking with pushchairs, etc., etc. So I think in the end, though we are moving more to public transport, and so we should, there's some everyday things that people need to do can't be catered for with public transport. So I think it's actually cheap at the price when you think you're getting public toilets as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Cooper, seconded by Councillor Watson. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Going to take a 2-minute break, and I mean a 2-minute break, just so people can stretch
Can we
and
get
get
on?
a cup of tea.